She screamed, "Cannonball!" so loud it echoed off my back porch. Then launched herself, arms outstretched and knees tucked, into the deep end of my pool like she was an Olympic diver instead of a 40-something woman in a neon floral swimsuit. Problem was, I hadn't invited her. In fact, I hadn't invited anyone. That was my backyard, my pool, and my Saturday morning that had just been hijacked by the HOA's resident hurricane in heels, Karen. And the second her cellulite hit chlorinated water, I decided I'd had enough. So I quietly walked to the filtration system behind the hedge, flipped 2 valves, and turned a knob. The draining hum began low and slow, almost like a warning growl. But Karen was too busy cannonballing and shouting orders to her army of over-perfumed guests to notice the whirlpool forming behind her. Not yet, anyway. Let me rewind 36 hours. Friday morning, I was sitting on my patio with a coffee, enjoying the last peaceful moments of summer before the HOA inevitably found something new to fine me for. Maybe my lawn was too green this week. That's when I noticed a group of landscapers hauling pink and white helium balloons, rental folding chairs, a giant Bluetooth speaker, and 3 boxes labeled "Mocktail Bar Do Not Tip." They marched directly past my mailbox and through the side gate to my backyard like it was a public park. I followed them, still in pajama pants, only to find Karen directing traffic like a general. She wore a sash that read "Queen of the Pool," and carried a clipboard so aggressively it should have come with a trigger warning. "Excuse me," I said calmly, "what are you doing in my yard?" "Oh," she replied without even looking at me, "this'll only take a few hours. It's my niece's bachelorette. We needed a pool. Yours had the best photo backdrop. You didn't think to ask first?" She finally turned, offering a condescending laugh that made me want to lob my coffee mug into the filter intake. "You weren't home when we did the HOA walkthrough. It's fine. You'll get exposure. I tagged your house in the Instagram promo. You're welcome. I wasn't even on social media. But Karen? She was the kind of person who treated Facebook like a holy manuscript and judged you based on how many mutuals you had with her yoga instructor. I told her this was trespassing. She said the bylaws gave her temporary grounds access rights for sanctioned event. There were no such bylaws. I knew because I actually read the packet. Karen just liked to bluff, and she was used to everyone folding. That afternoon I contacted my lawyer and the police. Both said it would be a civil matter unless she damaged something or refused to leave after a formal request. So I printed a notice and taped it to the back gate, giving her 24 hours to cancel. Karen responded by posting a photo of herself on a flamingo floatie in my pool with the caption, "Too late to cancel now," and a bikini emoji. Saturday morning, I awoke to find 30 cars clogging the street. My driveway was blocked by an ice sculpture shaped like a martini glass. A DJ booth was set up under the pergola I built with my own hands last summer. There were at least 40 people in my yard, all strangers, wearing flower crowns, sipping pastel drinks, and acting like they were at Coachella's geriatric cousin. Karen strutted around in platform flip-flops, barking at caterers and reapplying lipstick every 10 minutes. I didn't say a word. I just walked back into the house, shut the curtains, and watched through the blinds like a patient villain waiting for the third act. That's when the cannonball happened. She climbed onto my diving board with all the grace of a drunk toddler, screamed her war cry, and hurled herself into the water like a suburban meteor. The pool erupted. Cheers followed. And then the water started dropping, inch by inch. A few guests noticed first. A confused child pointed at the whirlpool. Someone asked if there was a leak. Karen laughed and made a crack about too many big booties causing a tsunami. Then the bottom of the pool began to show. Karen's laughter died mid-snort. "What the hell is happening?" she shrieked, still dripping as she clambered out. Her foot slipped on the wet tile, and she nearly ate pavement. I stepped outside, now fully dressed, with my phone in one hand and an expression of mild curiosity. "Oh, did nobody tell you?" I said innocently. "The pool's on a timer. Automatic maintenance cycle. Drains once a month. You drained it on purpose. Well, Karen, you did ignore the notice I posted. You know, formal written notice. I pulled out a printed copy from my back pocket like a magician with a subpoena. You can't do this. This was for Charlie's bachelorette. A woman in a sash labeled Bride TOB was standing barefoot near the half-drained pool, visibly shivering and now posting frantic Instagram stories about how the party had turned into a literal crime scene. I told you yesterday, I said calmly. This is private property. You're trespassing. You refuse to leave. I didn't call the cops, I didn't sue. I just decided to do a little pool maintenance. Like a good neighbor. Karen's face turned tomato red. She looked around, hoping someone would back her up. Instead, people were grabbing towels, sandals, and phones, clearly realizing that this wasn't the kind of party they could brag about anymore. The DJ cut the music. Someone dropped a tray of Jell-O shots. You'll regret this, Karen hissed. The HOA will fine you so hard your grandkids will feel it. Actually, I replied, per the bylaws, the HOA can't fine me without board approval. And seeing as I'm not even part of the HOA, this street was annexed out 2 years ago, you don't have jurisdiction here. She blinked. What are you talking about? I gestured toward the mailbox. See that sticker? County jurisdiction. No longer under Fairway Glades HOA. It's in the records. I could send you the PDF, but something tells me you're more of a Facebook legal expert kind of gal. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Somewhere behind her, Charlie was sobbing into a bouquet of plastic flamingos. I walked past her, down to the pump house, and shut off the valve completely. The pool was now a glorified puddle. The pink floaties sat deflated on the bottom like dead jellyfish. I turned back to the crowd. Party's over, folks. You've got 10 minutes before I call a tow truck for every car blocking my driveway. The silence was exquisite. Karen sputtered one last time, something about defamation and lawsuit, and calling her cousin's lawyer, then stormed out the gate, still dripping. Guests followed in awkward clusters, stepping over my flower beds and knocking over a solar lantern in the process. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I just sipped my fresh cup of coffee and watched the spectacle dissolve like cotton candy in acid. They had no idea what was coming next, because I had one more move planned, and trust me, it made the drained pool look like an opening act. By noon, the last of the confetti-streaked flip-flops had been collected from my lawn like abandoned landmines. The pink flamingo floaties were gone, the folding chairs had vanished, and even the martini glass ice sculpture had mercifully melted into a sad puddle in my driveway. But the aftermath? That stayed. My grass looked like it had hosted a mosh pit. My patio cushions reeked of artificial coconut rum. Someone had stuffed cocktail napkins into the jets of my hot tub, which now burbled like it had a respiratory condition. Oh, and there was a fake eyelash stuck to my kitchen window like a cursed butterfly. But instead of fuming, I just took photos. Dozens of them. I even flew my drone overhead for some wide shots, complete with timestamp metadata. Not because I was sentimental, but because I was building my case. See, if there's one thing I've learned living adjacent to an HOA war zone, it's that paper trails win wars. Karen's little stunt wasn't just obnoxious. It was illegal. She'd thrown a full-scale private event on private property without permission. That's trespassing, misappropriation, and, thanks to the hot tub damage and filter clog, property destruction. She wanted a war? She was going to get scorched earth. But I didn't come at her with torches and pitchforks. I went the bureaucratic route. Quiet. Surgical. Devastating. First, I called a friend of mine, Derek, who worked in code enforcement. Not the cops. Not some HOA lackey. Real county enforcement. The kind that didn't care about flowerbed symmetry but did care about permits, drainage reports, and illegal gatherings. I gave him a rundown, sent the footage, and let him process the delicious absurdity of what had happened. Wait, Derek said between chuckles. She actually cannonballed? Into your pool. Like a human meteorite. I'm gonna need to see that video for evidence. It's already in your inbox. Timestamp. Wide angle. She's midair. You're a monster. I love it. While Derek got to work verifying which building and zoning codes Karen had violated by staging a public event on non-HOA property, I moved on to Phase 2, my insurance company. I wasn't trying to scam anyone. I just wanted the damages logged, officially. I filed a claim for vandalism, noting the broken lights, hot tub tampering, and sprinkler head Karen's stilettos had decapitated like a mob boss. I made it crystal clear who was responsible, linking social media posts and tagging Karen's public profile, where, conveniently, she documented the entire bachelorette bash with hashtag poolside princess and hashtag Karen takes over. They called me back within 2 hours, not to deny the claim, to ask if I had any photos of the guests damaging the landscaping. 17, I said. Also 3 videos. Want drone footage? They did. I uploaded everything. The agent actually laughed out loud when he saw one guest, clearly overserved, puking in my bird bath while another tried to charge their vape on my garden lights. Now, while the wheels of county justice turned and the insurance adjusters tallied up the absurdity, Karen tried to pretend nothing had happened. She went radio silent for 2 days, which in her world was basically a hostage situation. No Facebook Live rants. No HOA-wide emails with 10 exclamation marks per sentence. Just eerie silence from the queen of the pool. I assumed she was either waiting for the storm to pass, or stewing in her lair. But then came the twist. Wednesday morning, a shiny new sign appeared on the HOA notice board at the front of our subdivision. Bright pink paper. Big bold letters. Mandatory HOA meeting conduct review. The topic? Inappropriate behavior by a community member. And the target? Me. I actually laughed when I saw it. Karen wasn't going to apologize. She was going to counterattack. Classic narcissist move. She'd turned the spotlight on herself, didn't like the lighting, and was now trying to swing it back in my face. I showed up to the meeting that evening wearing my favorite smug neutral polo shirt. The one that said, "I'm calm, but don't test me." The community center was packed. Karen sat at the front, red lipstick overdrawn and expression set like a school principal about to expel someone. Her posse flanked her. Debbie, the treasurer who once fined me for a non-regulation mailbox flag, and Gary, who wore boat shoes and pretended to know zoning law because he once interned for a city planner in 1993. Karen stood dramatically like she was accepting an Oscar. "Neighbors," she began, "we are gathered tonight to address a serious breach of community trust. One of our members," she paused for effect, "has deliberately endangered guests, drained shared resources, and created a hostile atmosphere that reflects poorly on all of Fairway Glades." I didn't even flinch. Let her monologue. I was waiting for the moment she'd dig her own grave. "This individual," she went on, "shut off a pool during an HOA-sanctioned event, causing injury and emotional distress. Several attendees left in tears. Children were frightened. A bride was traumatized. And worst of all, she pulled out a tissue, fake dabbed her eye. Our community's reputation was damaged on social media." She sat down, dramatically flustered. A few people nodded in sympathy. I stood up slowly, pulled out a folder, and calmly walked to the center. "Thanks, Karen. I'd like to offer a few clarifications." I passed out printed packets. Everyone got one. Inside? Photos of the damaged hot tub, screenshots of Karen's social posts, footage of the party, including her cannonball, and a notarized copy of the annexation document confirming my property was not under HOA jurisdiction. I waited while they flipped through the evidence, page by glorious page. "As you can see," I said, "the event was unauthorized. The pool is private. The gate was clearly marked with a no trespassing notice. Damages were recorded, and my insurance has filed a formal request for reimbursement from the responsible party, Karen R. The county has also opened a code violation case." Case numbers on page 7. Silence. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Also, I added, flipping to the final page, the HOA charter clearly states that the board cannot host or endorse events on private, non-member property. Which mine is. So I'll kindly request the board issue a public retraction of this meeting's accusation, or I'll file for defamation under Clause 14b. Karen's mouth was open. Debbie looked like she wanted to disappear into her cardigan. Gary coughed and pretended to review his own packet like he hadn't been drooling over Karen's speech 2 minutes earlier. After a tense pause, the HOA president, bless his reasonable soul, cleared his throat. "Thank you. Based on the documents provided, we'll strike this meeting from the record and reclassify the incident as a private matter." Karen stood up again. "You're just going to let him get away with this? He humiliated me. He sabotaged Charlie's bridal dreams. Charlie doesn't live here," someone muttered. "And she peed in my begonias," I added dryly. Karen exploded. "This is corruption. You're all spineless. I'll take this to the county board, the mayor, the governor. But before she could complete the Karen manifesto, her phone buzzed. Loud. Everyone heard it. She looked down and her face drained of color. Slowly, she sat back down. Karen's meltdown at the HOA meeting was spectacular, but it was just the first tremor. What followed was the real quake, and like any natural disaster, it didn't come with a warning siren, just destruction in slow, agonizing waves. You'd think after getting smacked with hard evidence, county code violations, and the HOA president publicly retracting her claims, she'd retreat. Reflect. Maybe take up knitting or Tai Chi. But no. Karen did what all Karens do when cornered. She doubled down, then tunneled through the floor just to sink lower. The day after the meeting, I found a folded note duct-taped to my mailbox. Not inside it, of course. That would be a federal offense, and Karen liked to dance on the edge of legal lines, not cross them. The paper smelled like cheap perfume and rage. It read, "You may have won this time, but this community will not tolerate hostile neighbors. Don't get too comfortable. We remember traitors." I chuckled. She made it sound like I'd sold nuclear secrets to a rival HOA. I took a picture of the note, logged it in my Karen folder, now up to 83 items, and tossed it in the trash. I'd already filed the restraining order request. Legally, Karen wasn't allowed within 50 feet of my property line unless accompanied by a uniformed officer or an active fire emergency. But restraining orders don't enforce themselves. And Karen? She was never one to let paperwork get in the way of petty vengeance. The next act of war came stealthily. I was working in my garage. Nothing fancy, just organizing power tools and tuning my bike, when I noticed the power flicker. Then it died. Silence. Total. My house went from hum to tomb in an instant. No fan. No fridge. No lights. I walked out back and saw the power box panel was open. Wires dangling. And a distinct set of wedge-heeled footprints in the mud below. I had a security camera trained on the side of the house, and Karen, in all her leopard print glory, had made a cameo. 2 hours earlier, she'd walked around the block, popped the panel open with a flathead screwdriver, yanked the shut-off lever, then strutted away like a villain in slow motion. If she thought I wouldn't notice until dark, she miscalculated. Badly. I filed the footage with the sheriff's department and copied Derek. Tampering with utilities? That was a whole new flavor of illegal. But I didn't just get the cops involved. I called in backup. Enter Mona, my cousin. Electrical contractor. Certified, bonded, and absolutely allergic to bullies. Mona showed up in steel-toed boots and a faded Nirvana tee, took one look at the situation, and said, "So this lady wants to mess with your juice? Let's mess with hers." She helped me install a smart panel with tamper detection, internal logging, and a camera built directly into the breaker box. She also suggested a new sprinkler system, motion-triggered, full pressure, and helped me set it so the side gate became a gauntlet of hydration if anyone uninvited tried to sneak through. We didn't trap Karen. We just created an environment where the consequences of her actions met her instantly. My yard was now a fortress, subtle, elegant, and electrically smug. 3 days later, she came slinking back. It was 7:13 p.m. I was on the patio, beer in hand, grilling a salmon fillet and enjoying the kind of silence you only get after outsmarting a nuisance. That's when I heard the sprinklers fire. There was a screech, a splash, then a shriek. "You psychopath!" I walked to the side gate, pulled out my phone, and hit record. There she was, Karen, soaked head to toe, mascara running, hair flattened, standing on my property like a wet cat that had just lost a bar fight. She'd apparently tried to sneak in and disable the breaker again. She failed. Badly. "You're trespassing," I said. Again. I was trying to talk. "Then maybe try knocking on the door like a human instead of crawling through bushes like a cryptid." "I slipped," she screamed. "I'm recording," I replied. She froze, eyes darting from my phone to the blinking red light above the power box. "You're insane. You booby-trapped your yard." "Legally? It's a motion-activated irrigation system. Great for raccoons, feral cats, and trespassing Karens. Also, your restraining order hearing is next week. You just helped me win it." Her jaw moved, but no sound came out. She backed away slowly, dripping, sputtering, defeated. The hearing was a formality. Between the camera footage, the vandalism, the trespassing, and the frankly alarming number of threats she'd made on Nextdoor, including one where she referred to me as the pool-draining serpent of suburbia, the judge granted the restraining order in under 7 minutes. Karen tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, a prank, even a neighborhood hazing ritual. The judge raised one eyebrow, said, "Ma'am, this is not college," and signed the order. You'd think that would be the end of it. But Karen wasn't wired for retreat. She was the kind of person who couldn't lose unless she rewrote reality to pretend she'd won. So when legal avenues dried up, she turned to smear campaigns. First came the flyers, printed on neon paper and taped to every mailbox on the block. "Do you know your neighbor is a saboteur?" it read. "He drained a community pool during a child's birthday. He installed illegal cameras. He is unstable." I picked one up and laughed so hard I dropped it into my recycling bin. The community pool? That was mine. The birthday? Never happened. And the cameras? Fully disclosed and legal, according to both the sheriff and my lawyer. Then came the fake social media account. One called me the Chlorine King, and posted blurry photos of me mowing my lawn with captions like, "This man is watching you. He has a drone. He's dangerous." Another tried to Photoshop a picture of me holding a flamethrower, badly, and captioned it, "Hates pets. Kills grass. Destroys joy." They got no traction. If anything, the neighbors rallied. One of them even hosted a barbecue and invited me specifically, just to spite Karen. It was during that barbecue that the final nail landed in her social coffin. Derek showed up in his county car and asked to speak privately. I thought maybe there was a new violation on the block. Someone shed too close to a fence, or Gary's illegal koi pond. But no. Derek had come with news. Karen tried to counterfile, he said, sipping soda from a solo cup. Claimed you had been harassing her. That you used drones to peep on her house, hacked her Wi-Fi, even said you poisoned her hibiscus. Didn't even know she had hibiscus. You don't, Derek said. Because she doesn't. And guess what? One of her accusations backfired. Apparently, when Karen submitted screenshots of my supposed hacking, she also accidentally included files showing that she'd been remotely logging into my smart home devices, trying to access my thermostat, my sprinkler controls, and my smart garage opener. She wasn't just making stuff up. She'd been actively committing cyber trespass. Derek grinned. I've passed it along. County attorneys looking into pressing charges. I almost dropped my ribs in shock. So now she's not just wet and banned, She's criminally liable? Yup. And here's the cherry. She's already on probation from a past zoning fraud complaint in another county. She moved here to start over. I nearly choked on my lemonade. The property listing was buried so deep on the county auction site you'd think it was trying to hide from embarrassment. Lot 47B. 2 parcels north of Karen's house. A small, overgrown triangle of land the HOA had always ignored because it technically wasn't part of Fairway Glades, just a forgotten sliver leftover from when the original developer miscalculated the road grid. No water, no power, and no legal access except through Karen's yard. Useless. Unless, of course, you knew exactly how to weaponize it. I won the bid for $6,411. No one else even bothered to show up to the auction. A week later, the deed was mine. Legally, I now owned the only landlocked access corridor to Karen's side gate, HVAC unit, and, most delicious of all, her prized backyard pergola, which she'd illegally extended 2 feet past her boundary line onto what was now my soil. You could practically hear the universe rubbing its hands together in anticipation. To make it official, I staked survey flags around the property. Bright orange plastic stakes marked the new line. Karen saw them on a Thursday morning and immediately stormed down the sidewalk like a Tupperware tornado. "Why are there construction markers on my lawn?" she barked. "Because it's not your lawn," I said casually, not even looking up from my newspaper. "County auction. Lot 47B. You're standing on it." She laughed. Actually laughed. "That's ridiculous. This is my property. My sprinkler system runs through here. My gardener trims those hedges." "Cool. Then you'll love the cease and desist order that's arriving this afternoon." "You're joking." "Wish I was. You're welcome to negotiate an easement agreement. Market rate. Monthly fee. I'll even let you keep the pergola overhang for now, if you behave." Her face twisted like I just suggested she rename her dog after me. "This is harassment. I'm calling the HOA." "Still not part of it," I replied. "But let me know how that call goes." By Friday, she was posting photos of the flags online with captions like, "Local menace buys land just to spite me," and "HOA needs to step up against evil neighbor." Most of the replies were sarcastic memes. One person photoshopped my face onto a Monopoly man holding a deed. Another just wrote, "Should have read the parcel map, Karen." But the flags weren't even the main event. That weekend, I had Mona and her crew show up with surveying gear and a small trailer. They were all in uniform, clean logos, paperwork in hand. No noise, no mess. Just measuring lines and installing a 6-foot privacy fence exactly along the new property line. It wasn't even on her side. It was mine. But it boxed in the pergola just enough that it now looked like a misplaced extension cord flopping over a neighbor's wall. Karen came out in a robe and flip-flops, mascara smeared like she'd lost a fight with her makeup drawer. "You can't build a wall. It's a fence. On my land. Within code height and setback. You're ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood." "Funny, I said the same thing about your bachelorette rager," she screamed. Not words. Just a guttural, frustrated banshee wail that made a passing jogger stop and slowly U-turn back toward civilization. Later that day, she filed a complaint with zoning. They investigated. Found no violations. In fact, they confirmed that her pergola encroached onto my parcel by 31 inches. She had 15 days to either remove the overhang or negotiate a settlement. That's when she started offering cookies. Literal, physical, store-bought cookies, delivered to my door in a Ziploc bag with a passive-aggressive post-it that read, "Peace offering. Let's end this." I took a photo of them, didn't eat them, I'm not suicidal, and added it to the evidence folder. Declined politely. Karen was now in full damage control mode. She even tried to show up at my neighborhood chess night, which I host monthly on my back patio, pretending to be interested in the game. One of my guests, a retired Marine named Chuck, gave her a look so icy she backed off before touching a pawn. Then came the real escalation. I got a letter from the Fairway Glades HOA, signed by the board's acting treasurer, Debbie, of mailbox flag fame. The letter was aggressively formatted with bold underlines and bullet points, accusing me of creating artificial barriers, limiting neighborly cooperation, and threatening community cohesion. They demanded I dismantle the fence, surrender Lot 47B to HOA authority, and attend a restorative justice mediation. It was so laughably overreaching that I framed it. Then I called my attorney. She sent them a certified reply stating that I was not, nor had I ever been, subject to Fairway Glades HOA governance. She included maps, charter documentation, annexation records, and a formal warning. Pursue this further, and we'll see you in court for boundary harassment. The next week, the HOA quietly removed the letter from their official record. Karen, however, wasn't done. Oh no. She did what petty tyrants always do when cornered. She went nuclear and dumb. One evening, I came home to find my new fence spray-painted. Giant white letters, clumsy and dripping, spelled out, "Bully." I had cameras, footage, and time-stamped proof of Karen sneaking out after midnight in a hoodie like some kind of middle-aged Banksy. I called the police. They took one look at the footage, rolled their eyes, and filed a criminal mischief report. When the officer knocked on Karen's door, I watched from my kitchen window. She answered with a smile so fake it could have been made in a lab. "I was asleep all night," she insisted. "Ma'am," the officer said, "you're wearing the same shoes from the footage." It was, without exaggeration, the dumbest attempt at denial I'd ever witnessed. She wasn't arrested, just fined and warned. But the real penalty came 2 days later, when my lawyer filed a civil suit for property damage. Small claims court. Minimal burden of proof. And thanks to her criminal record from that old zoning fraud charge, the judge awarded me triple damages. $300 became $900, plus court fees, plus a written apology requirement filed publicly. Karen sent me a handwritten note that said, "I'm sorry you misinterpreted my art." I had it notarized and framed. By now, the neighborhood had turned. Once, Karen held court at bake sales and yard sales, waving clipboards and judging everyone's mulch. Now she was avoided like expired shrimp at a buffet. Nobody wanted her drama. Her reputation as the HOA's queen bee had been torched by her own cannonball into my pool, and every petty escalation since had only added gasoline. So when I got the flyer about the upcoming HOA board election, I didn't ignore it. I smiled, folded it, and made a plan. Not to join. No. That wasn't my style. I had something better in mind. You see, there was a man named Phil. Retired accountant. Soft-spoken. Lived 3 houses down. He'd once mentioned how annoyed he was that Karen denied his application to build a carport. He also had the quiet support of about 10 families on the street, just enough to tip a vote if someone backed him. I offered to fund his campaign signs, help him prepare debate note, get him up to speed on how to challenge policy without sounding like a crank. Phil agreed. On election night, Karen arrived in pearls and a white pantsuit like she was announcing a presidential bid. Phil showed up in a golf shirt and khakis. No pomp. Just receipts. He calmly listed all the fines that had mysteriously appeared under Karen's leadership, the lack of transparency. The invite was subtle. A simple glossy card tucked into every mailbox on the street except Karen's. Midnight blue, silver lettering, minimal design. Just enough elegance to stir curiosity, just enough mystery to make sure everyone talked about it. It read, "You're invited to the grand reopening of Lot 47B. Saturday at noon. Lunch, music, and a very special dedication." I didn't need to include more. By now, everyone knew what Lot 47B was. And everyone, except Karen, knew who owned it. I'd spent the last 2 weeks quietly preparing. Nothing showy. Just slow, deliberate changes that built anticipation. First, I had Mona and her crew level the ground and lay down clean white gravel. Then came a few shade sails, a modern fire pit, a row of Adirondack chairs, and a small wooden stage framed by solar lights. Finally, I installed a custom metal plaque bolted onto a low stone plinth, right on the disputed line where Karen's pergola had once dared to reach. The plaque read, "Dedicated to peaceful property ownership, in memory of the summer of entitlement." I didn't even have to name her. The implication was nuclear. Saturday arrived hot and bright. Neighbors showed up in droves. There were cupcakes, a jazz duo, lawn games for the kids. People brought folding chairs and shaded their eyes while sipping lemonade like they were attending a town square ribbon cutting. Phil, now officially HOA president, gave a short speech about reclaiming neighborhood spirit and celebrating respectful boundaries. And then came the dedication. I walked up slowly, took the mic, and waited until the crowd hushed. "Most of you already know what happened here," I said, tone mild, gaze sweeping across the yard. "It started with a party I didn't throw, a cannonball I didn't approve, and a trespass I didn't allow." Polite laughter rippled. "But what followed," I continued, "was bigger than just a backyard dispute. It was a reminder that entitlement without accountability creates chaos, and that the best revenge, contrary to popular belief, isn't anger or escalation. It's a fence. A fence, a permit, and a long memory." This time the laughter was louder. People clapped. Even Chuck whistled. "I'd like to officially dedicate Lot 47B," I said, turning toward the plaque, "as a symbol of calm persistence of the long game and of not letting cannonballs go unanswered." Applause broke out. People began taking selfies with the plaque like it was a national monument. I stepped aside and let them enjoy it. I didn't need the spotlight. I just needed one person to see all of it and crack. And right on cue, she arrived. Karen didn't walk down the sidewalk. She stormed, red-faced, hair frizzed from humidity and fury, holding her phone in one hand and a rolled-up HOA charter in the other. She looked like a malfunctioning wedding planner at a funeral. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked. Phil stepped forward, calm as ever. "An open community event. You're welcome to observe. But do remember the restraining order radius. This is a direct attack on me." "You weren't named," I said, not even turning toward her. "Unless you see yourself in that plaque, which I can't control." "You're mocking me. You're all mocking me." A few neighbors backed away. Someone whispered, "Oh God, she's about to Karen again." Another person started recording. Karen pointed at the stage. "This is a violation of HOA decorum." "This isn't HOA land," I replied. "This is private property. My property. You know, the land you trespassed on. Several times. Then vandalized. That fence is illegal." Phil stepped up. "We checked. 3 times. Perfectly within code. And for the record, your pergola was not. You snakes. You jackals. You think this is funny?" At that moment, one of the kids, bless his soul, ran past wearing a pool flow tie and shouted, "Cannonball!" before jumping onto a nearby splash pad. The crowd burst into laughter. Karen's face tightened like a vice. "This whole neighborhood is sick," she hissed. "You're all sheep blindly following a vindictive manchild who turns backyards into battlefields." Chuck crossed his arms. "Lady, you trespassed, got caught, and spray-painted someone's fence. You're lucky you're not in jail. I was trying to defend my rights. By ripping out a power cable and throwing a tantrum?" She turned to me, eyes full of volcanic fury. "You'll regret this. I swear it. You'll lose everything. I'll file appeals. I'll start petitions. You won't win forever." I stayed seated, smiling calmly. "I already won, Karen. You just don't know how to stop losing." Then I stood, handed her a small manila envelope, and walked away. She ripped it open like it contained a bomb, and maybe it did, in her mind. Inside were 2 things. A certified invoice from my attorney requesting payment for civil damages she still hadn't settled, and a formal notice that her sprinkler system still crossed into my parcel with a 10-day compliance deadline. She screamed. A high-pitched banshee shriek that echoed across the entire block. Then she stomped away in furious silence, disappearing behind her now-flagged pergola like a retreating general after losing every battle. People clapped again. Not loudly, not mockingly, just quiet, appreciative applause. Like we'd all just finished a long, painful play and could finally breathe again. In the weeks that followed, things got quiet. Karen started parking around the corner to avoid the social shame. Her Facebook account mysteriously vanished. The pergola came down piece by piece until nothing was left but a sad rectangle of patchy grass. Nobody talked about her anymore. She became a background character in a story she used to star in. Meanwhile, Lot 47B became something else entirely. A shared space. We added a community garden. Kids played there. Someone even proposed using it as a monthly meetup spot for the neighborhood watch. I didn't charge rent. I didn't ask for thanks. All I wanted was for the space Karen once weaponized to become the one place she could never control again. Phil thrived as HOA president. Chuck got his carport. Debbie retired and moved to Arizona. No more mailbox inspections. The neighborhood relaxed. People waved again. And me? I kept the fence up. Not as a barrier, but as a trophy. A reminder that no matter how loud or entitled someone is, if you stay calm, stay smart, and play the long game, you can outmaneuver even the biggest cannonball. Because revenge isn't about screaming louder or fighting dirtier. It's about building something solid, legal, and undeniable, while your enemy drowns themselves in their own ego. And if you happen to drain a pool or two along the way, well, that's just good maintenance.